let's have a look at some of the new features in PD Pro Howler 8.2. Some of that will also be applicable in the Artist Edition that's coming out soon. First thing I'd like to do is explain that additional button that you see up here, the S as in swap buffer toggle. It's got the arrows on it. When you click it, you don't see anything initially because the content of the swap buffer is plain white, just as the blank main buffer. If I zoom in or out, no difference there. But this button is something that was added to make it a little bit easier to go back and forth. Something you could also do here from the image menu, and that's with jump to the swap buffer. So the swap image is in a background image. It's sort of like perhaps the other side of your canvas. Imagine that this here is where you draw your main picture, and then there is a swap buffer. There is an other image that's also visible or available and accessible. So if you click on that, you'll see it here. Now maybe on that you'll use a filter, or you draw something different there. Let's say we put a plasma noise here and keep it like so, and then switch back to the main buffer. So you see that up here in the upper left in the window decoration. We're currently looking at the image that's the main image, and if we click on S, it's switching over to show us what is in the swap buffer. Alright, we can use the J for jump. That's the shortcut on the keyboard. I'm hitting the J for jump right now, lowercase j. If you use uppercase J, as you see here in the image shortcut, that will actually copy the image to the swap buffer. So when you are in need of transferring it over, you can do that too. So what else can we do? What is the swap buffer for? Well, there's really a lot of things, and we've seen a lot of it used for providing the color channel in the 3D Designer. So that's something we have here. If you look at Transform in 3D Designer, you may recall that you can have this 3D elevation map controlled by what's in the main buffer, the image buffer, but the swap buffer can be used for providing the color. So you can have the coloration come in from the swap buffer, and that's this Gaussian, not the Gaussian blur, the noise, fractal noise we had in there. So another way to use the swap buffer is perhaps to rub through. If you paint and you set the mode to rub through, right, and as you rub through, you're actually cutting through what's behind it here, and you're seeing it being copied over from the main from the swap buffer into the main buffer, right? So we can see if we jump back and forth, this is indeed a copy of what was back there. Now let me undo this and go like back to this original state. There we go. So another thing we can do with the swap buffer is there's a couple of things we can do here. There's a combination of the two, either mixing them or adding them together, or subtractive. You can see the white part being subtracted from the background. Let's see what else. All sorts of different ways to combine it. No, regular mixing, of course, and then you can adjust how much, which one you want to prefer, and do sort of a blend from one to the other. There is also the displacement, and so displacing by the swap buffer. There's a couple of different types of displacement. Let's just use the first one here. That's a really interesting one to use, because the image that you have behind it in the swap buffer is now used as a displacement map, or sort of a displacement force, and the more you apply that, the more you see that image being distorted. And it's actually something that you use a lot for creating realistic marbles or wood grains or other types of textures. It's a great tool to create some fancy new textures. Of course, this guy is getting a headache, so let's stop that. Let's see what else. There is embossing by the swap buffer too. So whatever the image is that's in the swap buffer, you can adjust that to sort of create an embossed look to that, and perhaps indicate which way the light source is coming from. And so that's yet another place where the swap buffer can be used. And I think that sort of wraps it up for a starter. There are others, and you know, you'll definitely want to start using the swap buffer as part of your design workflow. This button here is really there to help remind you that you can also put an image in here. You can have an image in here. You know, you can put something like a filter. Let's put the same plasma noise, but it's actually going to be different. It's random every time. Maybe this time we'll actually use a color as well. There you go. And then on top of that, we can still use the image that's in the swap buffer to displace this one. Let's do one more here, maybe the color twirl displace, and see what that gives us. Many different effects, oily appearances are controlled or can be created with that. And so I'll leave it with that. Intentionally a very short tutorial, and I hope to have a few more coming on some very specific topics. This one with PD Pro 8.2. You can probably do that also with 7.2 in the Cool Creative Bundle and earlier versions of Project Dog Waffle, and both the Howler and the Artist Edition. So hope this helps, and enjoy.